The Inuit are a group of culturally similar indigenous peoples inhabiting the Arctic regions of Greenland, Canada, and Alaska. The Inuit languages are part of the Eskimo-Aleut languages, also known as Inuit-Yupik-Anangan and also as Esquliot. Inuit Sign Language is a critically endangered language isolate used in Nunavut. Inuit live throughout most of northern Canada in the territory of Nunavut, Nunavak in the northern third of Quebec, Nunajivut and Nunatukavat in Labrador and in various parts of the Northwest Territories, particularly around the Arctic Ocean, in the Inuvialuit settlement region. With the exception of Nunatukavat, these areas are known primarily by Inuit Tapirit Kanatami as Inuit Nunangat. In Canada, Sections 25 and 35 of the Constitution Act of 1982 classify Inuit as a distinctive group of Aboriginal Canadians who are not included under either the First Nations or the Métis. The Greenlandic Inuit are descendants of Thule migrations from Canada by 1100 AD. Although Greenland withdrew from the European communities in 1985, the Inuit of Greenland are Danish citizens and, as such, remain citizens of the European Union. In the United States, the Alaskan Inupiat are traditionally located in the Northwest Arctic Borough, on the Alaska North Slope, and on Little Diarmid Island. Many individuals who would have historically been referred to as Eskimo find that term offensive and or forced upon them in a colonial way. Inuit is now a common autonym for a large subgroup of these people. The word Inuit and Yupik peoples, who live in Alaska and Siberia, are not Inuit and do not generally identify as such. The Chukchi are, according to genomic research, the closest living relatives of the Siberian Yupik and other indigenous peoples of the Americas. Inuit are the descendants of what anthropologists call the Thule people, who emerged from western Alaska around 1000 AD. They had split from the related Aleut group about 4000 years ago and from northeastern Siberian migrants. They spread eastwards across the Arctic. They displaced the related Dorset culture, called the Tunit in Inuktitut, which was the last major Paleo-Eskimo culture. Inuit legends speak of the Tunit as giants, people who were taller and stronger than Inuit. Less frequently, the legends refer to the Dorset as dwarfs. Researchers believe that Inuit society had advantages by having adapted to using dogs as transport animals, and developing larger weapons and other technologies superior to those of the Dorset culture. By 1100 AD, Inuit migrants had reached West Greenland, where they settled. During the 12th century, they also settled in East Greenland. Faced with population pressures from the Thule and other surrounding groups, such as the Algonquin and Soong-speaking peoples to the south, the Tunit gradually receded. The Tunit were thought to have become completely extinct as a people by about 1400 or 1500. But, in the mid-1950s, researcher Henry B. Collins determined that, based on the ruins found at Native Point, the Sadlermiut were likely the last remnants of the Dorset culture, or Tunit. The Sadlermiut population survived up until winter 1902-03. When exposure to new infectious diseases brought by contact with Europeans led to their extinction. As a people, in the early 21st century, mitochondrial DNA research has supported the theory of continuity between the Tunit and the Sadlermiut peoples. It also provided evidence that a population displacement did not occur within the Aleutian Islands between the Dorset and Thule transition. In contrast to other Tunit populations, the Aleut and Sadlermiut benefited from both geographical isolation and their ability to adopt certain Thule technologies. In Canada and Greenland, Inuit circulated almost exclusively north of the Arctic tree line, the effective southern border of Inuit society. The most southern officially recognized Inuit community in the world is Rigole in Nunajivut. South of Nunajivut, the descendants of the southern Labrador Inuit in Nunatukavat continued their traditional transhumant semi-nomadic way of life until the mid-1900s. The Nunatukavumat people usually moved among islands and bays on a seasonal basis. They did not establish stationary communities. In other areas south of the tree line, non-Inuit indigenous cultures were well established. The culture and technology of Inuit society that served so well in the Arctic were not suited to subarctic regions, so they did not displace their southern neighbors. Inuit had trade relations with more southern cultures. Boundary disputes were common and gave rise to aggressive actions. Warfare was not uncommon among those Inuit groups with sufficient population density. Inuit such as the Nunamiut, who inhabited the Mackenzie River Delta area, often engaged in warfare. The more sparsely settled Inuit in the Central Arctic, however, did so less often. Their first European contact was with the Vikings who